Hello and welcome to the Rock Your Voice podcast. Vocal coaching tips that will transform your voice, interviews that will inspire, industry guidance, and so much more. Without further ado, let's get on with the show. Before we start today's episode, I want to remind you that the Virtual Artist Lounge is open. Passes are available to come and join us for the virtual element of the annual Singer and Songwriters Retreat. Now, this is not just a plug-in and play webinar. You're not going to be watching a live stream of us all enjoying the in-person retreat. This is interactive. It's a small cohort where you will get to learn from JUNO winners, CCMA winners, industry leaders in entertainment law, branding, booking bigger gigs, as well as voice coaching from my mentor, Mindy Pack. So it's well worth signing up. If you didn't make it into the in-person element, please join us for the week prior for all of the online workshops and events that are part of the Artist Virtual Lounge for the Singer and Songwriters Retreat. Passes are on sale now. Link will be in the show notes. I am so excited to share this episode with you. In-ear monitors can be a little baffling and overwhelming for emerging artists who are new to all of this. So stay tuned if you are considering getting yourself a set of in-ear monitors, or you're in a position where you need to start using them for your shows. Justin Kudding is with Plunge Audio, and you'll hear a funny story about how we met in a second here, but he explains all about what to look for and what you should be expecting from a really great set of in-ear monitors. I will let him explain that, and we shall get on with the show. Enjoy. How are you? How are things?
I'm doing really well, thank you. Yeah, it's that time of year when gigs are a little lighter, which I love.
Yeah.
I get to sleep in my own bed a little bit more and stay off the road, be at the office every day, and it's awesome.
Now, this is weird. I don't know if you remember, and I think I remember this right. I might be imagining it. But did we have like a jam session once, like 20 years ago?
We did.
Okay.
Yes, I remember it distinctly.
Oh my gosh, because I was like, I'm sure that happened, but then I'm like, maybe not, because I feel like there was another Justin there too as well.
I
want to say
Justin. I think there was it Josh?
Could have been.
That was playing the drums or something. It was a long time ago, but
right.
I think the plan was for us to try and find some bar gigs around town or something, and it never really went any further than the one rehearsal, one jam.
I'm like, well, thank God, because I think things seem to have worked out in the right directions for us.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I would definitely not have wanted to be responsible for holding back your musical career, because that's kind of been kicking off something crazy.
That'd be the least of my concerns, but it certainly seems like things are working out great for you.
Yeah, things are good. Things are good, and yeah, no, super happy to see what you've been doing too. Ever since that, I don't even remember where that was. Like, it seems so much like a weird dream sequence. I'm like, did that really happen? I have to ask
so long
Justin.
ago.
Yeah.
It's been quite the adventure ever since, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me, because this podcast it's kind of a mix of interviews with industry pros, but a lot of vocal training stuff, and a lot of emerging artists listen who are perhaps in that position where they're moving from the bar gigs and using wedges and going into exploring in-ear monitors. And so I figured, who best to talk to about this, to just kind of explain that transition and to understand when you're ready to start looking at in-ears. Because sometimes it even surprises me sometimes with artists, and they're like, yeah, I'm using in-ears, and I'm like, okay, for open mics, and like it's kind of blows my mind sometimes that people I feel are a little ahead of the game. But then also it's like, there's a voice coach that I'm actually going to be training with out in Vegas that I told you about, and he's like, I will only work with artists as if it is a live stage show with in-ear monitors, with everything exactly as it would be on stage, which makes perfect sense, because
it does. And that kind of answers the question in a sense, because it really, I think there isn't really a point where it's like, okay, now you're ready for in-ear monitors. monitors.
Right.
I think the earlier you can get into it, and the more you can get used to it before you start hitting the bigger stage, the better off you'll be. Because it is quite a transition,
Right.
especially as a vocalist of all things.
Yeah.
Once you jam in your monitors into your ears and you start to have to deal with things like the occlusion effect, there's a bit of a learning curve before you feel comfy and things feel natural.
Right.
Additionally, there's a lot of mistakes you'll probably make with your in-ear monitors,
Okay.
in how you dial in your picks. And uh, getting those things out of the way as early as possible will help you learn the right lessons so that when you are stepping on that big stage for the first time, you're you're familiar with them, you know what to ask for with the monitor tech.
Right.
You know how to get them to a place where it feels comfortable, it feels natural.
For sure. What sort of standout things would you suggest to people who are kind of new? What are the mistakes that you see most often?
Well, far away, it's not even close. I think that it's it's not just a mistake for getting yourself a good mix on stage, but it's a mistake that can lead to like physical damage to your ears.
Mm-hmm.
That is pulling one ear out when you're
Mm.
performing. Now, of
Okay.
course, if you're playing in a little cafe and doing an acoustic show, that's probably not going to be a particularly detrimental thing. And maybe it actually will be helpful in that space and in
Right.
that environment. However, as the rooms get louder, the environments get louder, if you're on stage with a full band, if you've got a drummer behind you, especially,
Mm-hmm.
pulling one ear out is actually so much worse than having even no in-ear monitors at all. Without getting into the science of it all, there's some compensation that goes on with the one ear that's open, and you actually end up doing more damage to the one ear than you would do if you had both ears out and it was kind of
Right.
equally loud on both sides. And
Okay.
so um, that's the first thing that I think singers need to be super aware of is if you are feeling a little bit stuck in your own head, if you feel like you're not getting enough of the environment around you, if you feel secluded within your monitors in, there's a bunch of things you can try that are worth trying before you pull one ear out. To be honest, I work with people who they just will likely never get out of the habit of pulling one ear out.
Yeah.
And but that really does it doesn't just make their life harder, doesn't subject them to fit, doesn't just subject them to physical damage to their ears, but it also makes the monitor engineer's job really,
Mm.
really hard because they won't really be able to listen into your mix and see what adjustments you need.
Right.
Uh, when you have one ear out, they can't tell what you're hearing anymore. And
Totally.
so you could have the best monitor tech in the world on stage with you, but if you have one ear out, then they can't actually reference your mix properly.
Right.
You might be 10 feet from the drummer, but they're 40 feet away from the drummer. And so they can't even compensate for the volume difference in what you're hearing with that one ear out. And so that's by far and away the most important thing to know when you are a singer getting used to in-ear monitors. Get used to working with both of them in all of the time. And if
Okay.
you do find that you're having challenges, then that's when you start exploring all the ways to overcome those things. As far as what some of those challenges are, one is the occlusion effect. So I'm sure I don't need to explain to you what that is, but anyone can experience it if they just stick their fingers in their ears and talk or sing, and suddenly you have this really hollow, boomy sound that goes along with your voice. And like that's not just an in-ear monitor thing; it's earplugs, it's whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If your ears are blocked, even if you have a cold, you can get the
Yeah.
occlusion effect. Um, but there are ways to overcome that.
Okay.
And like probably two of the most important things. One would be to have audience mics
Right.
that you set up that you can turn up to get just a feel of the not just the crowd, but actually the space in the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also there's there's things you can do with the band mix around you to help the your experience feel a little bit more natural, a little bit less like everything is like right here in front of your face and just like hitting
Right.
your eardrum from 3 millimeters away. Um, One is to, when you're building your in-ear mix, start with either your all the vocal mics on stage, set those levels first and get them nice and comfortable because all those mics on stage, they're not just picking up the voices that are singing into them, they're picking up the space that's
Right.
around them.
Right.
And so if you get a nice kind of splay of all vocal mics on stage and they're panned across your mix, and by the way, if you can, always have a stereo mix. That'll make a colossal difference. And we can talk more
Okay.
about that later, but if if it costs a little bit more or you have to bring some extra cabling or whatever it is, like invest into a way to get a stereo in your mix.
Okay.
And then you can pan all the voices around you, kind of as they are on stage, you pan them accordingly in your in-ear mix. And then whatever those mics are picking up in the room is going to be conveyed through your mix, and it'll give you a sense of the space that you're in. So you're
Mm,
not going to feel so secluded.
great.
Um, do the same thing with drums, for instance. When you're building your drum mix, always start with your overheads and then mix down from there. And the reason is a lot of times, and maybe you've experienced this too, when you're on stage and the tech is like, all right, let's get everyone's monitors going. Start with the kick drum. Let me know who wants kick. Well, the thing is, you're starting with a close mic. You're starting
Mm-hmm.
with a mic that's either inside the kick drum or a couple inches back. But we don't listen to drums like that.
Right.
If you're a drummer in a room and I wanna hear you play, I'm experiencing you in the space.
Yeah.
I don't put my ear right next to the kick drum, my ear right next to a tom and be like, oh yeah, that sounds great. That's not how we listen to them.
Yeah.
So have your overhead set up and get those dialed in, put some of the overheads in your mix, and then add the close mics to taste. And again, that helps create not just a nice natural listening experience, but it creates that sense of space in
Yes.
your monitors. So between having overhead heavy mix from the drums and then having all the mics kind of panned across and up in your mix between those things, and then the next stage after that would be the over or the audience mics. Between all those things, that should kind of introduce enough of the space and the room and the environment into your in-ear mix where you no longer feel like you're on an island.
I
And that
love
it
that.
actually, if you do it all right, it can really feel like you don't have any in-ears on at all.
That is amazing because that is the number one thing that you hear is like, I don't want to feel closed off from the audience. I don't want to feel like I'm just in my own head and all of that stuff. So having like the idea and just remembering to hear the space, not just the music. It's like
Absolutely.
the entire experience. So that's huge for anyone who is just like scared of making that switch over, because that's the biggest thing that I hear with artists at that kind of level of
Totally.
making that
Well,
change.
and space can be a little bit scary to introduce as well. You have to be careful with how you do it. And you also have to like don't be afraid to get aggressive with like EQs and high pass filters
Mm-hmm.
and things like that to actually kind of filter the space in a way that works for you and doesn't muddy up your mix.
Right.
Um, if you have a lot of vocals in your mix, make sure that you are EQing them at the sound console in a way where the EQs are helping all the voices and all the instruments and everything get out of the way, that are helping get out of each other's way,
Right. Right.
that are helping cut out a lot of the low end muck in the space, especially if you're in a big room and there's giant subs and a huge sound system and everything. You probably want to high pass your overall mix fairly aggressively,
Right.
so that a lot of that muck never makes it to your ears. And that way you can have a lot of the space without it getting too muddy.
That's this is so great because honestly I feel like a lot of times singers especially come into this maybe with not so much technical knowledge. Like I was lucky in the sense that, I mean, this was many years ago and it was all very old school. But it was like, okay, this is your setup for your sound, learn it. Like fair enough, you might not be in control of much of this further down the road, but make sure you know what you like, what you need, what you want to hear in your monitors and all of that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of times we're so consumed as a singer or a songwriter to be like, oh, I've got to get on stage and perform my song, that the whole element of like what's it going to sound like to you and the audience is just neglected. And if you don't have the opportunity to practice with the technology, I feel like it's such a shame, because when you are suddenly in the position to do that, like a client that I work with, and I think she's also now one of your clients, but brand new to in-ears and just suddenly like, I'm going on tour. What do I like? It's just like, okay, now this is going to be a learning curve, but you need to get used to this and you need to kind of have that confidence to learn about the tech and learn about the sound and the mix and what you want and how you want it to be.
Yeah.
So
And like learn some of the terminology that's going to help you with those conversations with your
yes.
techs, because Not everyone has the luxury of traveling with their own tech.
Yes.
But if there's in-ear monitor infrastructure in place at any of the venues you're going to, there will be somebody there to run it.
Mm-hmm.
And we can talk more about how to bring your own in-ear monitor infrastructure with you too, because that's actually not that unattainable anymore.
Right.
There's so many things that have become more and more affordable over time that allow you to actually roll with your own in-ear monitors everywhere you go.
Nice.
But whatever the case, if you learn that kind of the basic terminology to ask for exactly what you want, that really increases your chances of getting to that place where you are going to be happy.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing I'd imagine. I mean, I'm not an audio tech, but I'd imagine there's few things more frustrating than when somebody just says, "Well, it sounds too muddy. Fix it."
Right. Right.
Well, that could mean a lot of different things.
Yes.
But if you've learned the terminology, you've learned a little bit about EQ, there's ways to train yourself to do this,
Mm-hmm.
where you can actually specify, hey, and you can take it to all sorts of different levels. I mean, you go super technical and go, okay, can you give me, I need a notch at 800 hertz with a fairly narrow Q, -3 decibels. We'll start there. Okay,
Right.
that's one thing, but if you can at the very least go like there's something in the low mids that
Yeah.
seems to be mudding up my mix. Can we try just pulling out a little bit of the low mids, and that gives at least some sort of like
Yeah.
frequency bandwidth for the tech to work through, and give them a rough decibel amount of 5 decibels in the low mids. Can we just pull that out? And can you pan this thing for here, maybe an extra 10% to the right because it's a little bit too much in the way? And then the tech's like, that's okay,
So great.
done. And then you're not fishing and you're not
Yes.
hoping that their interpretation of your request is actually what you want.
Totally. And it's just and then giving yourself the confidence to be like, I can have a conversation in this language and explain myself, and no one's
Yeah,
getting frustrated, no one's ready to flip all the things up in the air. And yeah,
totally.
totally. Tell me a bit more about like having your whole setup. You just touched on that. I'd love to learn a bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the most common one by far, the most common rig that people tour with when they know that they're not going to have their own audio tech is called an M32. So
Okay.
that's made by Midas. You've probably seen one before. You can get one used for a fairly reasonable price,
Amazing.
and then you just need to buy the wireless infrastructure to go along with it. And that's just a rig that you can set up at home, and you take it to every venue you go to, and you plug everything into it, and that's going to allow you to actually connect your phone and dial in your mix and tweak the EQs and play with effects and all sorts of things. You can do it all yourself. You don't need a tech. There is obviously a bit of a learning curve there,
For
but
sure.
that's going to create, awesome consistency
Love
for
it.
you because you've learned the equipment, you've dialed in everything exactly how you want it, and then you just save it and you pick it up and take it to the next venue with you, plug it in, and you'll be 99% of the way to a perfect mix every time you step on stage for sound check, and then you just tweak to the room.
And just the level of confidence that's going to give someone, like, is that's night and day. That's so huge.
Totally.
So talk to me about Plunge. How did you get involved? How did this all happen?
Yeah, well, I didn't actually start the company. I didn't. I bought in 2019, but it was
Okay.
actually founded quite a bit earlier by a guy named Simon Fisk, and Simon very much started this company by by accident in a lot of ways. He was a very successful, very accomplished touring musician himself. And when him and his wife were expecting their first child, he was kind of looking for a way off the road. And his brother happened to have an audiology office in Calgary.
Very cool.
And so he called his brother and said, "Hey, do you have any, jobs at the office that I could take?" And the offer was, "Well, actually, we could use an audiology tech. You'll have to do some training, but there's a spot open for you if you'd like it."
Love
So
it.
Simon took him up on it and started working in his brother's audiology office, building hearing aids, taking inner ear impressions,
Very
things
cool.
like that, and was just looking at the components one day and thought like I think these are what in-ear monitors are made out of. And as a musician, he was just curious, hey, if I
Yeah.
tinker with these things and I put them into some sort of mold, like I wonder if I can create an in-ear monitor. And he ended up just building a set for a friend of his who worked at the Long McQuaid down the road. And his friend loved them and
Very
started
cool.
telling other people about them, and more people started stopping by the his brother's audiology office asking for Simon, uh, just inquiring about these in-ear monitors. And it got to the point where it's like, maybe I'm onto something here. And he put a sign up on his shed in his backyard and started the
Amazing.
company. I don't think he necessarily set out to be like a tech entrepreneur, but he just
Yeah.
had this idea and a passion and wanted to create something that he thought might add value to the local community of musicians. Um, well, that didn't stay small for long.
Yeah.
And word got out that there's this guy in Calgary building incredible in-ear monitors. Now, I hadn't heard of him yet. I I was playing some shows. I had a different brand of in-ear monitors, and after one of the shows, I was walking off the stage, and the cable caught on a mic stand, and they came off my shoulder and hit the ground, and one of them broke. And I put this panicked Facebook post up, and like, does anyone know someone in Calgary who can fix your monitors? I have a show in like 3 days. I don't have time to send these down to the States to get them repaired. I really
Yeah.
need help. And everybody starts tagging this Simon Fisk guy. You gotta talk to Simon, he can help you. So I reached out and he couldn't have been cooler. Like, oh yeah,
Nice.
I know it's not my in-ears, but like, come on down. I'll get you fixed up. No worries.
Awesome.
I went down, he fixed him on the spot. We had the best conversation. And when it was all said and done, I says, well, how much do I owe you for this repair? He's like, oh, don't worry about it, man. It was just great to
Oh,
like get to know you. You seem like a good guy. I'm happy I could get you back
love
up on your
it.
feet. And I left like, oh man, whatever this guy is selling, I am buying.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
so in. This guy's so cool.
Totally.
So I called him up a few days later and I said, hey, thanks for fixing my in-ear monitors. I don't even want these things anymore. I want whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
And so I ended up buying a set off of them. And it was actually, I mean, it was laughable how much better they were than my
Wow.
Ultimate ears. Um, but there was something that we had integrated. It was kind of a new tech he was trying out. It wasn't really working out.
Hmm.
And that was the one thing I didn't really like about them. So after using them for a while, I called him back and said, hey, man, these are amazing. But it was like this microphone system thing that he put in. I
Right.
said, I don't think I like that. Like, we do something to get rid of that. And so I went by and we just got to chatting and we just started talking about the in-ear monitors and I started giving him some feedback, not just about the microphone, but some of the other things I was hearing about them and what I was liking. And um, as we were chatting, he thought, this could be a guy that's worth trying some new ideas on.
Totally.
So he said, okay, I'll build you a new set without the microphone system, but I'm also going to try some like another little tweak.
Cool.
And can you let me know like if it makes it better or worse? Like, sure.
Yeah.
So I take him out on the road, play some shows, and then report it back. And said, okay, I like this about it, but I don't like this. And he's, oh, okay, well, I think I know how to fix that. How about I build you another set with another tweak? And then I took that on the road, and
I
that
love
just
it.
started this whole thing where I became a bit of a guinea pig.
Yeah.
And I started trying, oh my gosh, dozens of products for Simon. And through all this, over the course of years, we became really, really good. And we spent a
Nice.
lot of time together. I was hanging out at the shop all the time. And he started getting me to test different cables. And if he had a new material, he'd build me a set first and I'd try him out. And
Amazing.
through all this, I started to learn a bit about like the building process. And we started having more and more conversations about like the business itself. And
Yeah.
because, he, again, never really set out to be like an operator of a business.
For
There were
sure.
definitely things about running a business that he didn't really love doing. And we're wired very differently. And I think he kind of picked up on the things that were maybe my strengths
Mm-hmm.
that weren't necessarily his. And in 2018, he just sat me down and said, hey, listen, like this thing's grown to the point where I'd really like a business partner.
Yeah.
And I'd really like for it to be you. And I mean, I was flattered, but I initially said no because, like, at that time, especially things were getting really exciting for me career wise,
Right.
with touring and the gigs that were going on and everything. And I was loving it and I was busy.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
just like, I also, I didn't, I'm not a business guy. I'm a bass player. Why are you asking me? Um, but over the course of that year, we ended up having more and more conversations about the business. And also, I just started to, as I was thinking about it, sort of realize like this is the type of thing that actually makes a lot of sense
Yeah.
because, yeah, I'm young-ish and I'm really enjoying being on the road and I love this, but also like my wife and I are starting to have kids.
Right.
Like, I don't know if I want to be on the road forever. Like, this actually could be the perfect thing to like start to invest into now so that eventually I can be off the road and have
Yeah.
something to kind of move into that still music adjacent, which is really cool.
Exactly.
Um, and the more conversations we'd have about the business, the more I kind of realized this actually sounds really interesting and maybe fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so in 2019, we sat down again right at the beginning of the year there. And it was February 2019. I told him I'm in, and
Amazing.
we struck a deal and ended up as 50-50 partners in the company.
Congratulations. That seems like it was a very smart move. So,
So
that's,
far,
and
so
like you
good.
say, it's so aligned. Like, it's so funny when I reached out to you, because I'm hosting the retreat, and you're like, yep, all of the people at your retreat are using Plunge audio. So, like, explain to me a little bit about the difference between custom in-ears and what you guys are doing.
All we did was customs. When I first joined,
Right.
we didn't have a universal fit product.
Okay.
Uh, and it wasn't until really after COVID that we
Mm,
switched to a universal product. And even at that time, we were still offering both.
right.
That the idea had been on the radar for us, but we didn't really realize, I guess, how investment heavy it was going to be to actually create a universal fit product that was like different and better than the ones that
Mm-hmm.
existed on the market because there were some challenges that were actually quite hard to overcome.
Right.
And we're so busy building custom in-ear monitors all the time that we just like never really could find the time to dive into how to create a killer universal in-ear monitor.
Right.
And the reason we wanted to, it's not because we had, all these people asking about them or inquiring about whether we offered universals or anything. It was because having built custom in-ear monitors for at that point almost 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
what we really noticed was some patterns
Right.
with particular challenges that people were having with customs and
Right.
challenges that we really couldn't overcome. They weren't really in our control.
Right.
Two in particular, and there's more, but these are kind of the big two. One is having a perfect fitting custom is essentially not even really a thing. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
impossible in a way because our ears are always changing.
Yeah.
Like from the day you're born to the day you die, they're always changing just naturally over time. But there's all sorts of things that can really accelerate those changes and can actually almost make it even a day-to-day thing
Right.
where, I mean, even if you take let's say some ibuprofen,
Mm-hmm.
your ears will be slightly different because ibuprofen is an anti-inflammatory and there's always general inflammation levels in your body and that
Right.
inflammation actually manifests inside of your ear canals. And so when that inflammation is reduced, your ear canal is now a slightly different shape and size than it was before you took the ibuprofen. Your ear canal is affected by swimming,
Right.
flying on an airplane, getting a cold or a flu, weight loss, weight gain. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, none of these, and there's more things, but even
Yeah.
if none of those are a factor, just time itself
Yeah.
will change your ear canal. And so, even if you're one of the lucky ones who gets a perfect fitting IEM the day that you receive it, brand new, it's only a matter of time before it's not going to fit anymore. And you
Right.
won't be able to get that isolation that you need anymore. They'll start to become painful and uncomfortable. But, like, I'd say three-quarters, maybe ish, of people actually never really have a perfect fitting custom in-ear monitor. And the
Okay.
reason is because you have to go to the audiology office to get the impression of your inner ear.
Right.
When you get that impression made, it is a snapshot of that exact moment,
Right.
your ear canal.
Yeah.
And again, what what's been going on in your life up to that day where
Totally.
you get the impressions made, and then you have to send those impressions off, and maybe it takes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, whatever it takes, depending on the company, to now get your IEM back in the mail.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's say it takes a month. So much can happen in that month that actually changes the shape and size of your ear canal, where even on day one, you may find that it doesn't fit
Doesn't fit.
properly.
Yeah.
And so, as a company building custom in-ear monitors, we would get these impressions in the mail, and that's all we have to go on.
Right. Yeah.
So the impression shows up and we build the custom IEM according to that impression. But we don't know what your life circumstances were leading up to
Totally.
getting the impression and since you got it. And so we build it off of the mold that you give us, and then we send it to you hoping that when
Mm.
you get them, they fit perfectly. And most of the time, it was okay. And
Yeah.
sometimes it was perfect, but there was no shortage of times where you'd be like, ah, it's a little bit painful.
Right.
Like they feel too big. It's literally based exactly
On
on
the
the
day.
impression that you gave us. And that's just, there's nothing we can do to guess what's going to work for you when we send these to you. So the fact that it's hard to get a perfect fitting IEM out of the gate, and it's impossible to keep them perfect fitting forever,
Right.
that was a challenge where we're like, man, somebody has to come up with a solution for this because it just isn't working.
Yeah.
And companies had tried all sorts of, interesting things, uh, but none of them were really like great solutions.
Right.
And so, but the reason nobody was willing to go from customs to universals, even with this baked in issue, is because all the universals out there were designed to be manufactured either by machining
Mm-hmm.
or by injection molding.
Right.
And with both of those processes, it requires essentially a lot of 90-degree angles. Um, the problem is there's no 90-degree angle in your ear,
Right.
right? It kind of goes down and then turns a corner and goes back up. And the organic shape of the ear is actually it's very curved, it's very
Yeah.
rounded. And so it made sense why no universal IEM manufacturer was able to really create something that actually had an organic shape that moved with the natural shape of the ear.
Right.
And that's something that really took us all of COVID to figure out how to create. And
Cool.
we didn't even know if a manufacturing process really existed that could create that shape for us that wasn't just the pillar support 3D printing method.
Right.
And that's another huge downside to inner monitors. It's kind of the second big one is the fragility of them.
Yeah.
Um, because of the crazy shape of custom in-ear monitors, you really have to use one specific style of 3D printing to create them. And that end result, that material is very fragile.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I broke mine. That's how I met
Right.
Simon.
Yeah. Yeah.
But people, they break them all the time.
Yeah.
And I've seen some funny ways of people breaking their ear monitors over the years. But they just didn't have the durability. So not only do they just like not fit well forever,
Yeah.
but then they're prone to breakage.
Right.
And repairing them is so time intensive and it's expensive. And so when COVID hit, we were essentially sitting on our hands for 2 years because the music industry shut down,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, and we're making musician products. And so we had, I think, what was it? Over the course of those 2 years, I think we sold like 9 sets of in-ears or
Right.
something crazy.
Right.
Now, luckily, we were still like lean enough where we could just like uh, kind of pare everything down and lay low for a while and keep the company going. But we were twiddling our thumbs, and we decided that this could be a great opportunity to invest some time into seeing if we can actually bridge that gap
Yeah.
between, you know, a custom IEM with like custom level, not just fit, but also sound and performance, but in a universal IEM shell that will actually fit perfectly forever, will offer real durability,
Mm-hmm.
is available immediately, is easy to replace and repair, and really all these upsides that come with universals, but also trying to integrate all the upsides of a custom. And it took
Amazing.
actually about 2.5 years to finally pull that off. And so we released those, and we were still building the customs, but it was funny. I think Simon and I maybe were a little too honest or something. But people would call us asking for customs,
Yeah.
and I think our consciences were just getting the better of us. Like,
Right.
listen, we can build you customs, but like we've got this other product that's half the price, and honestly, the value proposition is so much better for
Right.
you. Like, maybe try these first before you spend the amount of money you want to spend on custom IEMs. See if these do the trick. And we did that so much with people, and people were like taking us up on it and going, okay, I'll try them. And we
Mm.
were offering a money back,
Yeah.
refund guarantee policy or whatever. And so enough people were trying them and going, oh, like, no, I love these. Like, I don't even want
Amazing.
customs anymore. And it didn't take long for us to just like shelve the whole custom thing altogether and go,
Wow.
this product makes so much more sense for people. So let's just like fully invest into this. Let's
Yeah.
scale this as a company and make this the thing for us.
I'm thankful that that happened for you guys and that you had the time to hunker down and figure out what was actually meant to happen down the road. That's really, really cool.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's been like wildly transformative for the company because
Yes.
this is the type of thing that we can sell to a brick and mortar retailer that can put it on the shelf and make
Yeah.
it available to people, and so we can create those types of partnerships, and we can they are easier to manufacture than custom, and so it's from a manufacturing standpoint, it's so much more scalable, and
Mm-hmm.
the company is just like the ceiling's a lot higher for our growth trajectory
Yeah.
than it was with customs. So it ended up being the best thing that ever happened, honestly.
No, that's so cool. And I think it's really important, and I'm glad we're having this conversation and I get to share this because um I there are a few people who are just like, oh, if they're not customs, they're not worth it, blah blah blah. There's a bit of that attitude. So it's really nice to hear the how and the why behind the universals, just so that people can understand it, and don't be afraid to go try it, because I do think a lot of people at this sort of like the listeners of this podcast, like the emerging artist level who are just stepping into this world, this is just brilliant. It's you're not going all in with a custom set, and you can actually just try it out, and like you say, there's so many people out there who actually prefer it over the customs. So I think this is really really valuable. What are sort of a couple of top tips that you would say to people buying their first set of in-ear monitors? What should they be looking for, like comfort and fit? What should it feel like?
It should feel super snug and secure without being painful.
Okay.
It's still going to feel like there's something in your ears.
Yes.
So it's not, you're not hoping for a fit that feels like it's floating in your ear canal. Like you do want it to feel like really secure in there, and you should be able to sweat and run around and dance around the stage and not have these things move around. Now there's like the fit side of things with universals can be a little bit tricky, um, because I think oftentimes people tend to assume things about their ears
Yeah.
that maybe aren't necessarily true. And even if they are true, knowing how to overcome them, I think it can be challenging for people. I actually just had somebody in the shop today who was having a really tough time with the fit of their in-ears.
Right.
And they definitely like they have very small ears,
Mm-hmm.
and they thought, well, then I just need to get a really small tip
Right.
to work with my ear. And they ended up coming up with really innovative ways and finding all sorts of crazy tip types and styles, and even grabbing, multi-flange tips and cutting off just the very end of it and trying to see if that would work. And nothing was working. And so I looked inside their ear today and went, okay, yes, you have small ears, but I actually don't think that's the source of the problem here. The source of the issue is that you have a very aggressive bend in your ear canal.
Right.
And so when I look down your ear, I don't actually see a hole, I see a wall of skin. And it's because there's this huge curve right at the opening
Right.
that kind of takes you around the corner, and then the canal opens up there. So instead of trying to like get something as far down that as we can, why don't we instead try and fill the space in the opening
Yeah.
and have it actually sit back in your ear, and we'll just fill that space in the opening and have it fire down into your canal, have the sound bend around that curve as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
trying to make the in-ear monitor bend around the curve. And so instead of trying a smaller tip, and I actually asked them, like, have you tried the largest tip? Well, no, I don't.
Right.
Those are too big for my ears. Let's see what
Yeah.
happens. We put on the largest tip to fill that gap and fill the space and have them float kind of further outside the ear canal. And suddenly they were perfect.
Amazing.
And so a lot of people think as soon as they put their in-ears in, well, I'm not getting a great seal. So I need to go for a bigger tip
Mm-hmm.
because that'll fill more of the space and give me a better seal. Well, that might be the case, but what might also be the case is that you need to go for a smaller tip, and instead of filling more of the space, use a smaller tip that gets you deeper into the
Yeah.
canal. So, and this is all case by case. So there
Yeah.
isn't necessarily like one piece of advice I could give somebody other than don't make assumptions about what's going to work for your ear canal. Just try everything.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
also very normal for people to have two different sized ear
Right.
canals.
Right.
For me personally, I use a medium tip on one side and a small tip on the other.
Right.
That is super normal. So try different tip combinations. And I've seen people who go, well, I got really big ears. I don't know if it's going to work. And then you look at their ears and it's like, who told you that?
Yeah.
I,
Who actually has been looking in there and making
yeah,
these
I don't know who
judgments?
told you big ears. They're pretty average, maybe slightly bigger than normal, but nothing that, using this size tip isn't going to help.
Right.
So don't make assumptions about your ear canals and your ear shape and the size and everything. Just when you get your in-ear monitors, try all of the tip combinations, try pushing them in as far as you can and see if that gets you kind of the optimal isolation and comfort and everything. And
Amazing.
also try a larger tip that seats them back further in your ear and see if that does something to the sound and the fit and the feel. Um, so that's a huge thing. Is just experiment with the fit.
Yeah.
Don't make assumptions about your ear shape and size, and just try a bunch of stuff because, like, I can guarantee, well, I can't guarantee. 99.9% of the time, what's included with your ear monitors, there is a combination of tips and a way of wearing them that will work for you
Right.
and that will give you an optimal IEM experience. You just have to not assume that I have small ears. I'll just put the small tips on.
Right.
Oh, these don't fit. These must not be right for me. Try everything
Yeah.
and try
Yeah.
different ways of doing it. So that'd be one of the major things. Um, Another thing to keep in mind when you're buying your in-ear monitors is like there are different levels of attenuation that you can get with your in-ear monitors. So attenuation is how much of the outside world is blocking out.
Right.
And the higher the attenuation, the more occlusion effect that you're going to get.
Right.
Now, like I had mentioned, there are ways to overcome the occlusion effect, but the fact is, if you like with our Unity Stage IEM, it's minus 28 decibels of attenuation. That's very aggressive. That
Right.
really, really blocks out the world. Now, some people really want that. Be on stage, more attenuation, the better.
Right.
Um, but some people want to experience like a little bit of the outside world that maybe like, 10 to 20 decibels of attenuation is actually more optimal. Yes, it is letting in the environment, which for me muddies up my mix and kind of like
Right.
takes away from that clinical, very reference style experience that I
Right.
want on stage. But for some people, that's actually what gives them life and energy and
Yeah.
makes it feel
Yeah.
natural and fun. So, like, think about that. Think about what you probably want to experience and go, okay, even theoretically, does it sound appealing to me to be totally isolated and have complete control over every little nuance that I'm hearing? Or does it sound more ideal to me to have a little bit of the environment mixed in? Because different monitors attenuate at different levels.
Right.
So with the Unity Stage, they attenuate at minus 28 decibels. With the Unity Dynamics, they attenuate at minus 18 decibels.
Right.
So there's a 10 decibel difference in how they block out the outside world, and that's going to affect your
Yeah.
experience on stage. So think about things like that too. And then, yeah, so the fit, the attenuation level's huge. I'm trying to think if there's anything else for a first time buyer. Uh, the I don't know if I should even touch on this, but like I think one thing that people can get caught up on, and this is something that we've got feedback on when we start making custom in-ear monitors, is like, what about a custom aesthetic?
Right.
Um, Especially for the shell itself. Like the shell that we create is just black.
Yeah.
Now, it's not because black is our favorite color, it's because with this manufacturing process that we're using, we had to think about the trade-off here. There's very limited aesthetic options for it, but it's also a hyper durable product.
Right.
So do we want to have less aesthetic options but have something that'll truly last forever, or
Right.
more aesthetic options but have it be more fragile? We went with the former.
Yeah.
And but by looking at it and going, well, I don't want a black IEM, well, that whole shell is going to be inside your ear.
Right.
Nobody other than you will ever see that. Now, the faceplate people will see. In your case, unless you're wearing a hairback, nobody will see it.
Right.
But for me personally, like, and this is just a personal taste thing, so not even sure it's worth chatting about it. I don't even know if it's necessarily advice, but like the aesthetic side of things is interesting. I think it kind of matters, but it mostly doesn't.
Yeah.
In my case, performance is everything, and so if what the main driver for you is the aesthetic, you just might end up with a suboptimal um, experience with your IEMs. And to
Totally.
me, of all things to have a suboptimal experience on, it's your ability to hear yourself and perform with confidence and clarity is like that should never be on the chopping block
Right.
as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. This has been amazing. This is so valuable and so helpful. So thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else you'd like to add to share with anyone thinking about in-ear monitors or trading in their in-ear monitors and switching over to you guys, or anything else you'd like to share? And I would love, I feel like we could nerd out for hours about ears and like just having how sad is that? We could nerd out for hours about ears. But no, I love all this stuff. And like when you say like how things are different, like people freak out about their voice, and I'm like, well, how much sleep, stress, diet, things like all of those things that change the voice, of course your ears are going to be changing and things are different there too. So that's, for me, that's a huge takeaway from this conversation. But any other parting words that you would like to share?
Um, well, I mean, I think the whole thing that we're trying to achieve with Plunge Audio is to try and give you an experience with your inner monitors that prevents you from having to spend any of your capital, either emotional or mental capital, thinking about your in-ear monitors.
Right.
And the optimal in-ear monitor experience is one where you forget that they even exist at all.
Right.
And so that's what we're really trying to do. And so, the just buying in your monitors, even if it's Plunge Audio, is one part of the process to having that optimal experience. And so, like we had already talked about, just like really educate yourself on learning some of the technical lingo and learning about the frequency spectrum and understanding, what do different frequency ranges sound like.
Yeah.
There's online tools where you can actually go and like, oh, that's what 3K is. That's wow, okay.
Right.
But then when you're on stage and you're listening and going, I think that's that 3K thing that I was listening to, and it's really bugging me. And like whatever it is, just educate yourself on how to forget that in-ear monitors even exist at all when you're wearing them, because that does exist. It is a thing.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who've never had an amazing inner monitor experience. There's people who've had inner monitors for 10 years and they've hated them for 10 years.
Right.
But whatever, the venues they play, that's the infrastructure available, so they have to use them. You don't have to be stuck
Yeah.
in that space. There are ways out of it. And sure, there's YouTube videos, whatever, but like you could even call Plunge Audio. Call your local, audio tech that works at a pub and is in the house tech there for 25 years.
Yes.
I'm sure they've got a few things that they can share with you that'll help you get over that hump, because once you experience a a perfect inner monitor mix, you will never want to go back from that. It truly is the best way to hear yourself and the best kind of listening experience you can possibly create for yourself in a performance.
I love that. I love that. So yeah, if it isn't great, explore.
Yeah.
If it doesn't feel great, explore.
You sum that up in whatever that was, 4 or 5 words. Like, you should be on the other end of that microphone giving me advice here. I'll just ramble.
I love it. Now this has been really, really great. Really helpful, because I like I said, a lot of my clients, a lot of people listening are on the verge of getting into that, and I think it's really important to have some understanding of what to look for and what to listen for and how everything should feel. So thank you so much. That's really, really cool. It's so great to see you after well, I know we bump into each other occasionally at things here and there, but ever since our jam session in 2003.
Probably about that. I think, if I'm not mistaken, you had recently moved to Calgary. Is that right?
Yeah.
Like you had just moved to Calgary. So when was that?
That would have been 2003, 2004.
There you go.
Yeah.
Wow.
I love it. Literally one of the first musicians that I met here. So very cool. Really cool.
Well, thanks so much for having me, and congrats on all your success with Rocket Vocal Studios.
Thank
Everything you're doing. I mean, my gosh, your reputation out there. I'm sure you've heard this before, but like everyone first Sam Harding is the miracle worker. I mean, yeah, my Brennan Wall, he said one session with you changed his life.
Oh, Oh, stop. I love him so much. And I love it too, because him and I nerd out about, and it's when I connect with people who are just like, you really want to talk about that? I love it. Good. Yeah, Brennan's amazing. So, thank you for sharing that. And same for you. Like, I love seeing you on all these different stages and doing all these really cool things. So, keep up the amazing work, and I'm sure I'll see you around very soon.
Hope so.
All right, Justin, well, you take care, and thanks again for everything, and I'll be in touch soon.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
You take care. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, subscribe. It helps other listeners just like you discover the show. Also, I'd love you to follow along on social media. It's Rocket Vocal Studios. That's ROCKIT Vocal Studios. If you have any questions at all, I am here for you and your voice. Email me, emma@rocketvocalstudios.com. Would love to chat. If you ever want a session, if you want to nerd out about the voice, I am here for you. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great day. We'll see you next time.